Okay, let's do the second video on these forms. As far as the forms, we do have the cone, we do have the cube. As far as applying the shadow to the cube, so which way does the light come from? Well, definitely it's not coming from this side, so it'd be safe to push away. So here I'm going to push away very, very softly. I have to imagine the fourth corner way over here somewhere, and then I'll push away this way. As far as this corner here, of course, going to throw kind of almost like a barn kind of a shape. It should have something like a little point. Again, it'd be nice to be able to put like a little still life. Do we need the still life? No, but if you wanted to kind of prove it to yourself, but it's kind of strange to imagine the shadow on the cube. But this is the way I pretty much would work it. Again, imagining a corner, and then of course stretching it out and coming back inwards. And from here I do a little transition, kind of pushing inwards, or pushing outwards in this case. And of course making it softer and lighter. As far as the rest of the form, let's move over. Let's draw the cylinder. As far as the cylinder, it's very, very useful. It's very, very practical. There are a lot of applications for the cylinder. 1, 2. Turn the page over. Turn the page over. Turn the page around. Now, I'll usually just draw it again, but a little bit further upwards. And then I'll turn it around the other way. And then here, I'll draw like the bottom of a U shape, the bottom of a U shape. And that gives me a pretty good cylinder, again, with a sense of perspective, like you're looking slightly over it. As far as the shading, I'll treat it like the others, or maybe this time I'll do it the other way. I'll come from the left to the right. So, again, how dark would it be? Again, there are multiple different ways you can actually add. This way, it's actually nice sometimes to actually have a form to draw as a still life, because you can see all these curious things of how light bends and transitions, and it does all these nice optical illusions that your eye is going to be focused on. Like you didn't even know it was there until you actually slow down and you examine things, and you can see that there's so much more. But again, just drawing from your imagination is just fine. It helps us kind of build a little bit of a folder where we can put information in, things that we've learned and things we've tried. So it's always good to kind of just draw things first. Just right now, again, we're just applying the transition, and we're just seeing how far the transition can actually create this illusion. So again, in this case here, like the cone, I did it one section, and then I came back over it again, and I did another section on the top. The problem was to try to blend where they met. In this case here, I'm pulling the transition all the way across in one shot. As far as, is it good? Is it a good transition? It's decent, but there is a little bit of grayness, from here. Like here is a little bit nicer. Here's a little bit nicer, but here you could use a little bit more work. So I'll darken up a little bit more there. I'll blend it up. Didn't need too much, but definitely all these things could be tweaked a little bit more. As far as moving it forward, let's push this one further out. Let's not make it so obvious that the light's going to be towards the middle. Let's push it out further. That'll create more movement. So again, right now I'm holding the pencil from the very far back, and I'm really, really tearing into it with my shoulder muscle and creating some really, really nice long stretches of movements. And I'm going lighter, 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 lightest. Is the transition good? I think it's pretty good. Fade, fade, fade. So that's pretty good. That's a really nice transition there. As far as the bottom, I'm going to take it a little bit easier. Very, very short strokes, rounded always. So it blends in really, really nice. And again, as far as doing these things, where did I learn these things? I don't know. I'm much older now. It's kind of hard to say that I did them, and I never took classes in high school, but in college, of course, we learned stuff, but I just don't really remember that far back. But they made a lot more sense when I started teaching others. And again, I like to use them as building blocks for people that are trying to be more creative and trying to have the sense of a bridge as far as, drawing things on my own versus just copying things I see from someone else's work. But this is very, very interesting. So again, when we do progress and we do finish the forms, I'll kind of introduce this philosophy as to how to perceive things, And again, many artists have seen, they've seen similarities to this, but it really does work as far as using the shapes of the forms, throughout your entire career as doing visual art, because it helps you to make sense of all kinds of things. Especially if you want to just create things, invent things. So as far as this side here, I think it's okay. I'm not really into a very, very short transition, but this side, again, is very, very close to the light already. So I just put the smallest amount, just kind of get rid of that outer contour. I probably did it a little bit too dark. I should have done it a little bit softer, maybe sharpen the pencil a little bit. As far as this part here, again, just a few little rounded strokes. As far as the bottom, this is not very good. And then you pull some of the shading upwards still. As far as here, again, this is going to be like the idea of where the light comes this way. So if this was a hollow space in the inside, a negative space within the form, I would apply my darkest here, and then I would push outwards. And I'd make it lighter, 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 and lightest towards the other side. So again, once you have a really nice rhythm for your stroke, your blending will get a little bit better. Once you get a really good feel for the weight of the pencil in your fingertips, you'll be able to control the pressure much, much easier. And again, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for it to have a little bit more fun, in the sense where it doesn't seem like everything is so painful to do. It's not that difficult. So again, this looks pretty decent. Of course, I'd probably come back and clean it up a little bit more. If this is something that, I'd want to keep as a really good example. But again, this is just a quick example. As far as the light, it definitely seems like it's running this way. So again, the shadow, one of the things I didn't like so much from the other shadow that I did for the cone is I drew it a little bit too vertical. So this one here, I'm going to pull a little bit more, as if it's cutting across from it. So as far as the shadow, again, I do want to make sure I have some good contrast. As far as contrast, that is a very, very critical word that you always have to consider when you are producing any kind of an art form, any kind. You want to always have contrast. Contrast will help to elevate the experience for anyone, even for yourself. When you contrast something, it's like it makes things snap, it makes things like really, really pop out. So again, you should always be looking for contrast. The more contrast you can use, the better. So again, if you're a writer, you contrast characters, you contrast words. If you're a chef, you contrast flavors. There's just so many opportunities and so many things you can do with contrast. So again, when you get close to finishing or completing, or even in the very, very beginning, when you're brainstorming, think about how am I going to contrast it? What am I going to do? Am I going to contrast angles? Am I going to contrast colors? Am I going to contrast textures? Because again, you want to create more of a stimulating effect for the viewer. That way people will respond to it stronger. And contrast will always do that. If you don't have enough contrast, well, people get a little bit, they just kind of have a tendency to not really notice your work. They just kind of move on very, very quickly, making you feel as if the performance wasn't very good. When in reality, it probably was good, but the thing is, you just need to spark it just a little bit more so, with a little bit more contrast. What could you have added to it to make it more memorable or to make it more noticeable? So again, the contrast here, we have quite a bit. As far as we have this idea, of course, against the white paper, anything's going to contrast against that. But again, the transitions in this case here, we want to make sure the contours are clean. We want to make sure we pull the transitions as far as we can. We want to make sure that we always have a sense of, the light falling. That way it seems like, everything kind of flows together. But again, this is the cone. The cylinder. As far as the next one, we do have the pyramid. The pyramid is super easy to draw. You just draw, you know, a less or equal sign or a V shape. I never really draw very good pyramids. You know, they always look kind of phony. But again, I just start off as a triangle, and then from there you just draw a line going off into space, just like a cube. From here, I go downwards as to how far would I go out. Maybe this is the part that I always can never really agree upon. Maybe here, or maybe there. I'll go with here. As far as the shading, you know, whichever one you want to start off darker. This one's probably the easiest one to shade. A lot of people like to put transitions on these, and I think you can, but it shouldn't be very noticeable, you know, where it really fades a lot. The more you transition it, the more you make it seem like it's somewhat rounded, you know, and then if you don't really have enough contrast between these two sides, then you really lose it. So again, you can do transitions. Again, it is sitting at a diagonal, and some people think of it, well, it's at a diagonal. It should seem to have a little bit of non-consistency within the light reflecting. So they try, but sometimes it's just too much, and it looks a little bit off. So here I'm just going to soften it up a little bit. As far as pencil wise, you know, I really like having on my other side of my pencil, having that side sharp. That way I can always get into these little crannies, these little nooks, and sometimes the dulled edge can't get in there. But that doesn't really matter. I know some people always say, well, you should always have a sharp pencil. Well, it could be a rounded edge, but again, you can always turn it a little bit. You know, a person that knows their pencil, they know that there's a sharp edge on it. So all you have to do is just kind of turn it. So again, when I draw like this, you see how it's kind of like that, but when I turn it just a little bit, or I turn it again, or I turn it again, you know, sometimes the lines will be a little bit thinner. As far as on this side, I'll go a little bit lighter. Now, as far as doing art, you know, especially like what we're doing here right now, a lot of people don't feel like we're actually doing art. You know, we're doing exercises, and that's fine. You know, if you want to think of it like that, that's fine. That's good. You know, it's like if you were to go exercise, it's like, what are you exercising for? You know, are you actually exercising, or are you just going through the routine, or what are you exercising? Are you going to go climb a mountain, or are you going to, what are you doing all that exercise for? You know, so again, this idea of exercising, you know, it's fun. You know, it helps to refine. It helps to kind of tweak. You know, that's what we're kind of looking for. And for people that have never done, you know, it's something, a new experience. And again, you need the more practice, the better. So you be a little bit more fluid. So you have a little bit more of that sense of direction as to where is this going, or what does it need. So that's where this is going. Again, as far as the pyramid, it looks pretty decent, you know. As far as it having super smooth shading, no. As far as it have very super clean contours, so. But again, there's always a little bit more room for tweaking. And never really get it right on the first pass. Usually you have to come back and kind of clean it up a little bit. So again, as far as the shading, you could always go over it in different directions to kind of soften up some of that grain. As far as the very last one, it is called the sphere. As far as the shadow for this one, again, you know, since this side's a little bit darker, you can always push it out that way. And the fourth corner is over here, like it goes, so this one goes out this way, goes that way. So again, the shadow would rip that way. As far as the sphere, again, all it has to be is roundish. You know, it can be like this. You know, again, you can have that nice little circular movement. It can be like that. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be like a perfect circle. If you want to draw a perfect circle, you can always, of course, you know, like that little icon, you know, the little hand icon that like pointing in that direction. You can hold it like that and slip your pencil in there like this. As far as your thumb is going to push the pencil vertical until it becomes parallel with your index finger. This will make a medium-sized circle. If I hold it out further, this will make a large circle or a tiny circle. All you need is room to be able to turn it. So I'm going to make a medium size. I'll put it right here like this. I'm going to hold it vertical, and I'm going to focus on the index finger. We'll make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to try to make some room here. I'm already kind of wiggling around a little bit. Pretty good. So that's a pretty decent circle. As far as shading it, I'll show you in the next video, because this is probably going to take at least 8 to 10 minutes. So I'll show you the next video on that one. I'll just shading the sphere. Thank you.